So it seems that the Philadelphia 76ers are not as ready to win as quite a few of us, me included, believed that they were. I thought they would win this series in 6 games. I believe I didn't make a video for it, but I talked about it on the podcast. And I figured that while the Celtics had the better coach and were a really good defensive team and they play the right way and they move the ball and all that stuff, I figured the Sixers would just be too talented. Because we have seen young teams go to that level. It was the OKC team way back now with Westbrook, Harden, and Durant. The Magic with Penny and Shaq, and I didn't think it was ridiculous to believe that Simmons and Embiid could be on that level. However, through quite a few different things, we're learning they just weren't really ready. In terms of what the Celtics are doing, I mean, number one, Stevens, his after timeout plays are great. And the defensive stuff they've been doing against Simmons has been really interesting, where number one, they're a roster that just has a lot of big bodies, right? So they have a better chance of staying in front of him than maybe any other team. A couple teams here and there. I mean, Golden State, Houston's acquired quite a few decent-sized wings, but the Celtics are up there, definitely. They've been starting Al Horford on him a lot of the time. Horford is kind of like your ideal guy for Simmons because Simmons is not that great of an ISO player right now. And I think that's one way that you can go at him, where the Celtics, they are switching it sometimes. Sometimes they're going under a screen. Sometimes they're fighting over the screen. It is an interesting thing where I don't think they have a specific game plan for Simmons. It's more like depending on who's setting the screen, how much contact there is with the screen. But it just seems like they're making the right decision every time, where they're just making him pass the ball off because he just can't get ahead of steam going towards the basket. So in the future, what does this mean for Ben Simmons? I mean, number one, I think he has to get the post game down more. So if you switch a smaller guy onto him, he can just back him down and go to work. He did one interesting thing in this game 3 where he got like Shane Larkin switched onto him, and then he passed the ball off, and then he immediately hit the low post, but Philly went with like somewhere else in the offense, so he wasn't able to get the ball back. But like, that's an idea, definitely. There's just improving as an ISO player. I mean, getting your one-on-one game down. I know Simmons is a pass-first kind of guy, but he's a very good ball handler. So I have to guess that he can develop. I'm not even going to say he has to develop like the moves to do it. I mean, we've seen him get past guys on the open floor this season, but improve your ISO abilities, you know? Study some James Harden, although you're not going to make step-back threes, but still, I mean, you have to be able to do that. Like, if Al Horford is going to be on you, and like Horford's he's a damn good defender, but at the same time, like, there is an athleticism gap between the two of them, and you've got to be able to make them pay for it. And he has not been able to do that. And I know Simmons' box score numbers are not like hideous, but if you're watching the games and you're seeing the stretches of time where it seems like he's not really making an impact, and he'll bring the ball up floor, run an initial action, the Celtics will find a way to just slow him down. He'll pass the ball off, and I don't know, 7 or 8 seconds have gone off the clock and nothing's really happened. That's a tough way for your offense to be productive, you know? Next we get to Joel Embiid. I think, number one, he's just tired as hell because he has to step out of the paint so much against the Celtics team that just passes the ball around, sets screens, cuts to the basket, all that stuff. But then they're also asking him to do the most tiring thing you can do on offense, which is post up, because you're just having like Aaron Baines just beating you up the entire time. I believe Horford, he's been defending Embiid in the post a bit as well. And that's just difficult to do. I think we saw it on that closeout from Horford on Embiid at the end of Game 2 where, Embiid has had a million blocks this season in that situation, right? Where he just gets that burst of speed, pins it off the backboard, and there you go. And dude was just done. Now, is this a matter of conditioning? Yeah, probably a little bit. I know he's very athletic, but when you don't play for 2 years and you have a minutes restriction 1 year, and then even this season, I wouldn't say he was 100% thrown out there. 63 games playing 30 minutes a night. It's definite progress, but it may not be enough for him to be ready for a high-intensity playoff series. And then if we can get to Embiid's actual game and things that we could be learning in this series, he's a very good post-up player, but when you're going up against Aaron Baines, who's strong as hell, and then Horford, who's a very good post defender, it's been tough. His post-ups have not been very productive in this series. I remember seeing on Twitter that the Sixers are scoring like half a point per every post-up possession he's had, which is really bad. And I do think Embiid's offense is an interesting conversation. Defensively, he's great. But on offense, I do think sometimes he could be a little bit of a black hole, where it's you get him the ball in the low post and the offense stops moving and the team becomes a bit easier to defend. That being said, he's such a good post-up player typically that it may not really matter that it's predictable. And he also draws a lot of fouls. Throughout his first 2 years in the league, he's shot over 7 free throws a game, and that allows you to get some of those points back against the opposing bigs in foul trouble. However, we are also seeing that when you're going up against a team that knows how to defend that sort of stuff, you need to be able to go to an option B, an option C, and Embiid's still, he's not a raw player, of course. He has a lot of ability, but there are certain areas of the game where he does need to improve. And I think his shooting could be a big one. He was pretty okay for mid-range in this series from what I remember, but in today's NBA, if you can hit mid-range, that's cool, but if you can make threes, then that's awesome. And wasn't much of a threat from outside the series. In fact, as a Celtics fan and someone who wants the Celtics to win, whenever Embiid shot a three-pointer, I was relieved because I'm like, well, great, he's not down low doing Embiid things. He doesn't have a chance to grab the offensive rebound and all that. So yeah, it seems that these two guys, while both being very good, may simply not be as good as we crowned them this early on. I do also think there has been a bit of deer in headlights for Simmons. Maybe not a whole lot, but I do think there's been a bit of it as well, where it just seems like sometimes he's got this, either with his lack of movement on the floor or whatever, where he's just going, what the hell do I do right now against this team? It's the Brad Stevens effect, Ben. And you better figure it out, because you're going to be playing these guys a lot over the next 10 to 15 seasons or whatever. So yeah, these two need to make some improvements. Maybe we all went a little too crazy. For all we know, they could make the jumps and they could get to the finals next season. I don't think that's ridiculous to think. If we can look at some of the things I talked about and what are the chances that they improve on these things? If we start with Embiid, I think it's fair to think his outside jumper can be consistent over an entire season. Number one, he's a good free throw shooter, and those usually have a correlation with one another. But also, he kind of did it last year. He shot 37%. Of course, this year, double the amount of games, so we just couldn't sustain it. But I'd like to think that based on what we've seen so far from him, he can be a legit three-point shooter, because that may be a necessity for a high-usage center nowadays. We see it between Towns and Jokic and DeMarcus Cousins and whoever the hell else that I just don't remember. Guys who have to score a lot at the center position. Being able to hit from outside's a thing. As far as Ben Simmons, again, the handle is there. His physicality is not going to go away. He's strong as hell. I think he has to get a little more selfish sometimes, and he might even be similar to LeBron, actually, where all he's going to have to do is just get a bit of steam going towards the basket through like a simple hesitation move, and then because he's just so big and strong that once he gets that initial step on you, or even like a half a step, you're not going to be able to stop him from going to the rim because he's just a freight train, you know? So, they'll be fine. They'll be okay. But in the meantime, we learned that they just weren't totally ready yet.